Welcome. Today is Britain's 22nd annual Holocaust Memorial Day, and the 19th time that this day has been marked in Redbridge. In 2002, this memorial garden was dedicated so that the borough could have a permanent memorial to the victims of the Holocaust and other genocides. This day provided a mark of respect for the victims of the Nazi persecution and of all genocides and those who still suffer the consequences. The aims of Holocaust Memorial Day are to remember all victims of the Holocaust and Nazi persecution: Jews, Roma and Sinti, Gypsies, East European civilians, Russian prisoners of war, trade unionists, Christians, communists, political opponents, disabled people, Jehovah's Witnesses, gay men and lesbians, and black Germans. To reflect upon those affected by more recent atrocities, such as Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Srebrenica and Darfur. To educate about the dangers of anti-Semitism, racism and all forms of discrimination. The Holocaust was a defining event of the 20th century and as part of Britain's history. Although mainland Britain was not occupied during World War, the impact on our nation was tremendous. Refugees fled here and were given protection from Nazi persecution. It was our British soldiers who liberated Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Survivors and refugees who were able to rebuild their lives are part of our British heritage and culture. Nazi ideology was founded on racism, anti-Semitism and discrimination, creating a fascist state which rejected human and civil rights. Sadly, these evils continue to exist in British society, with the continuing occurrence of hate crimes and attacks against minority groups. Events such as the Holocaust, the genocide of Srebrenica, Darfur and Cambodia are relevant today because they provide warnings of where racism and prejudice can lead. By supporting Holocaust Memorial Day, we show our commitment to oppose racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia and discrimination on the grounds of disability, religion or gender. The theme for the Holocaust Memorial Day is one day. Holocaust Memorial Day is one day, the 27th of January, that we put aside to come together to remember, to stand against the Holocaust, Nazi persecution and the genocide that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur, in the hope that there will be one day in the future with no genocide. We learn more about the past, we empathise with others today, and we take action for a better future. This year, to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, we should all pick one day in history and learn about one day. How many lives changed on one day, and what happened to those in Warsaw on the 19th of April 1943, when the Jewish inhabitants of the Warsaw Ghetto fought back against the Nazi regime. One day is just a snapshot in time, and therefore cannot give the full picture, the context, the background that is needed. But it can help bring a piece of the full picture to life. The age or gender of the victim, or their geographical location, ensured that one day during the genocide was typical. The same date would be experienced very differently by Jews hiding in France, Jews incarcerated in Auschwitz, Jews awaiting their fate in Hungary, for example. For those who suffered for days, weeks, months, years, focusing on just one day is a starting point. A day for us to learn more about what happened during the Holocaust and the genocides that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur.
One day, On Holocaust Memorial Day 2022, we all come together to honour and remember all those who lost to the horror of the Holocaust and the genocide which has claimed the lives of millions. We learn from this difficult history and together build a better future. The theme of this Holocaust Memorial Day is One Day, as a reflection on the experiences of the survivors who've told us they did not think of yesterday, they knew tomorrow might not come, and so all they had was today. One day. Between 1941 and 1945, 6 million Jewish men, women and children were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. This attempt to murder all the Jews in Europe shook the foundations of our civilization. The Nazis targeted anyone they believed threatened their ideals of a pure Aryan race, including Roma and Sinti people, disabled people, gay people, political opponents and others. The Nazis' actions were the consequences of unchecked bigotry, hatred, anti-Semitism, and even now serve as a dire warning of what can happen when hatred is left to fester and grow. This is why today is so important. As a council, we're absolutely committed to making sure the legacy of the Holocaust is never forgotten. Without a strong and firm dedication to remembering the past, without listening to those who have lived experiences we can only imagine, and without reflecting on our own responsibility to stand up to hatred, we all risk allowing the scourge of anti-Semitism and racism and violence to once again flourish. One important part of Holocaust Memorial Day is to recognise genocide in all its forms, to remember those who've been murdered in all parts of the world, and to commit to building a safer world for everyone. With this in mind, I want to take time to remember the events in Cambodia. From 1975 to 1979, the Khmer Rouge, in my lifetime, led by Pol Pot, imposed an extremist program to reconstruct Cambodia. Millions of people died through starvation, disease and exhaustion, and thousands were executed. We will never forget. In 1994, approximately 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus were murdered in just 100 days in the genocide in Rwanda. We will never forget. Only a year later, in July 1995, against the backdrop of an ongoing civil war, Bosnian Serb forces led by Ratko Mladic murdered around 8,000 Muslim men and boys in the town of Srebrenica. We will never forget. Even more recently, in 2003, a civil war began in the region of Darfur. Arab militia known as the Janjaweed attacked black African people, destroying entire villages, murdering civilians and displacing many more. All these years later, the violence is still ongoing. We must do more. Today, we remember the struggles, the pains and the anguish of those who endured the Holocaust, where each day could have been their last. Just one day can be a lifetime. It can be all there is left, and for so many it was. Now is our turn to use each and every one of our days to help make our world a better place for all communities, to work for a safer, better future for everyone. We each have the luxury of choosing what we do with our days, and today we choose to remember, to honour and to stand with those who suffered so much. Today we choose to assist the persecuted, stand together in resistance, speak out against persecution, stand together against rising divisions and hate. Stand together with the memory of people who were murdered. Stand together to support those in need. Holocaust Memorial Day empowers us to remember. It gives us a responsibility to work for a safer, better future for everyone. We can all step up and use our voices, our skills, our positions to tackle prejudice, discrimination, intolerance, wherever we encounter them. This is our responsibility, but it is also our great privilege. Join me this Holocaust Memorial Day to remember, to honour, and to take a stand against prejudice in all its forms.
Malay Rachamim, Shoichein Bamroimim, Hamatzei Manucha Nechaina, Tachas Kamfei Hashechina, B'malois, Kadoshim Utorim, Kazayar Rakia Masirim, Es Nishmois, Kol Chalalei Hashoah B'Europa, Shenishchatu v'shenekneku al Kiddush Hashem. Ana Rachamim, Yastirein b'seisek anafav li'olamim, v'yitzro b'tzrachayim es nishmoisom, Adonai u'nachalasom, Yanuchu b'shalom al mishkavoisam, v'noimar Amen.
My name is Mia Hooper.
And my name is Talia Bachman.
And we are both Jewish former students of Cantor Solomon High School. We both work in the Kehillah department, and we try and find new ways to bring our community together every day. Myself and Talia, alongside our sixth form students, have been reflecting on the Holocaust Memorial Day theme of One Day.
Each student today is presenting a piece to express their own interpretation of this theme, linked to the survivor of the genocide that they have researched.
My name is Layla Schiffman. I'm 16 years old and I'm a Jewish student at Cantor Solomon High School. Today I'm going to be telling the story of Ivor Pell, a man who survived the Holocaust at just 12 years old. One day, I heard a rumour about a new virus in China. One day, I heard a rumour that this virus had now reached England. One day, I heard that there had been 11 deaths from this virus. This was no longer a rumour, it was becoming a reality. And one day, on the 18th of March 2020, we were sent home from school so that we could stay safe from COVID-19. This was the day that changed life as we know it. One day can change everything. And one day, everything changed for Ivor Pell, an incredible man who survived the Holocaust at just 12 years old. Ivor grew up in Hungary with his parents and his 8 siblings, 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Ivor had grown used to the anti-Semitism that he experienced in Hungary, and had even said having rocks thrown at us was quite normal, as was being called dirty Jew. One day, in March 1944, a new legislation was passed banning Jews from having any contact with non-Jews, and all Jews were required to wear a yellow star. One day, all of the Jews were forced into ghettos. His father and eldest brother were taken away for forced labour. This was the last that Ivor ever saw of them. The family were then moved to a bigger ghetto for 2 days, after which they were forced onto a train to Auschwitz concentration camp. In Auschwitz, his only thread to his old life was his older brother Alec, who saved his life on multiple occasions. Without him, any one day could have been the end. Like the day Ivor, scared by air raid sirens, was reluctantly dragged away from the barracks by his brother Alec. The very next day, those same barracks were emptied out, and the children occupying it were sent to their deaths in the gas chambers. In January 1945, Alec and Ivor were moved to the Elach concentration camp in Germany, in which the conditions were terrible. Ivor contracted typhus, and Alec, aware that the doctors would kill anyone with typhus who was too ill to work, helped Ivor escape so he could recover elsewhere. A few months later, they were moved to a new concentration camp, which was soon liberated. One day, in November 1945, Alec and Ivor made the decision to emigrate to England. Ivor said, "I have had 2 very, very lucky strokes in my life. One was to have chosen England to be my country." This story moved me in more ways than one. Well, one of those ways is the idea that a person's life can be changed by the action of another. Ivor lost his family on that one day, that first day, when he was taken to Auschwitz. His parents, his siblings, all but one. To think that every day I can live in freedom, to be with my siblings, who are 19 and 11, and see them every day, to play with them, to laugh with them, even to argue with them, freely, whenever I like, is something that can so easily be taken for granted. Sometimes we just need to stop and think about everything that we have, and what others may be deprived of. One day, one action, one person can change everything, and that's why I'm so grateful for every day that I get.
Hello, my name is Abby Saltman. I'm 17 and a Jewish student at Cantor King Solomon High School. Today I will be speaking about the Rwandan genocide. A political assassination triggered one of the biggest mass killings in history, the Rwandan genocide. On April 7, 1994, a government-backed campaign of mass killing started in Rwanda. The aim was the ethnic cleansing of an empowered minority group called the Tutsis. Battles against the classes led Hutu extremists to massacre hundreds of thousands of ethnic Tutsis and their Hutu sympathisers. Within a span of 100 days, at least 800,000 people were killed in the most rapid genocide ever recorded. During this period, 6 people were murdered every minute. Dead bodies piled up on roadsides as people were encouraged to kill their neighbours. Killing spread to all corners of the country and violence unfolded before the international media. Mary Chantal Uwahamaru was a teenager during the genocide. She heard on the radio people saying, "Kill every Tutsi, we don't need any Tutsi being left." More than 50 members of Chantal's family were murdered. She felt that Rwanda was not her home anymore, and in February 1995 she went to join her sister who had been living in London. She has made her home here in the UK and has a family and is training to be a social worker. She says, "Moving to the UK, I found a home. I found a home because it was secure. There was no fear." One day Chantal was fighting for her life. The next she was safe in Britain. People shouldn't have to live in fear of their neighbours, have to live in fear of being brutally persecuted, attacked by anyone, let alone their neighbours. In Judaism, we have a saying, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha," love your neighbour as you love yourself. No matter what race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexuality you are, we should all come together to unite and remember the past and educate ourselves and the wider society for the future. This principle is a profound idea that distances our differences and brings us together to share one same aim of love for one another and hope for our future. We should take this one day as a new beginning for us to change the future. Genocide does not start with murder, it starts with prejudice and division. We must commit to learning from genocide for a better future.
Hello, my name is Ethan Brill. I am a 16-year-old sixth form student at Cantor King Solomon High School. Today, I will be sharing the story of Elie Wiesel and his experience throughout the Holocaust. One day, he was put in a ghetto. This was only the start for 15-year-old Elie Wiesel. One day, he was put on a train to Auschwitz. One day, he was separated from his family and he saw his mother no more. One day, he was put to work, a helpless slave with no hope. One day, he moved camps and he saw his father no more. One day, he was freed and the war was no more. One day, he found his sisters and they were reunited once more. One day, he was married, named his child Shlomo after his father. One day, he would write about his experience, teach of the horrors and the grief. One day, I turned 15 and I thought how grateful I am compared to others. People like Elie were around my age when the Holocaust occurred, so the chance that he could have had a life like mine, or I could have had a life like his, really resonates with me. One day, my brother was born and diagnosed with autism. People like him wouldn't have lived at the time to tell their story. So for someone like Elie to tell his tale shows the significance in Holocaust survivors sharing their story. One day, I was inspired to tell the story of Elie Wiesel, who was a great man and a survivor. What Elie and many others went through, he lived on to tell the story of what he saw and how he survived those critical times. This inspired me to share his story. One day, every day, you should be forever grateful for the family you have, the horrors avoided, the love your parents give, the annoyance your siblings bring, the freedom to live, cherish it. One day, you will think about what they fought for and what they went through. People like Elie, people like you and me. Treasure every day, every seemingly mundane moment. You never know when one day may change your life forever.
My name is Mehdi Adimi. I am a 16-year-old student at Cantor King Solomon Sixth Form. As a Muslim, every action, every thought, and every belief, every day, is guided by my religion. To think that just one day my life could change dramatically because of my religion, or my ethnicity, or my background is terrifying. This happened to Eric Missouri, who grew up during the Rwandan genocide. He told his story. I was born 2 months premature. My mum was pregnant with me in 1993. My dad used to drive a truck from Rwanda to Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. The government at that time said he was a spy, so soldiers came home to capture him. He found out just in time and ran away to join the RPF in Uganda. One day, my mum was left at home. One night, the soldiers came and found her alone. They asked her, "Where is your husband?" She told them she didn't know. They asked her where her other children were, and she told them she'd sent them to the village. "No, you're lying," they said, and started beating her. When they were beating her, she started feeling pains. They said to her, "So you want to give birth to a snake? Let's help you." And then in this moment, on this one day, my mother's life changed forever. They took a knife, they cut her, and they pulled her out. They left thinking that we were going to die. The old woman next door, a Hutu, heard screaming in our house. After the soldiers left, she came and took us both to the hospital. My mum stayed in hospital, but the old woman took me back to her home. The genocide started at that point. I stayed with that old woman during the genocide in Ramera near the stadium. People would see me with her, and she would tell them, "This is my grandson." I used to go and visit her after the genocide. She was still living in the same place, and so was my family. My brother Yuhi was killed during the genocide, but my elder sister, survived. One day, I came home from school and found out the old woman had died. This was in 2006. I went to her place and I cried a lot, like she was my mum. To think that just in one day my life could change dramatically because of my religion, my ethnicity, or my background is terrifying. That is why it's important to remember the genocide in Rwanda along with all other genocides. Not only to remember, but to ensure that they never happen in the future. A Rwandan poet named Regan Mashaw left us with this message. They were born from their mother's womb, with not even a little effort in making themselves. possessed the main reason that was behind their massive killing. To the victims of the genocide, may their souls rest in peace, and to the survivors, we are together with you. Be it at heart, soul and mind, in the hard to believe journey that you still have in this world. Remember, reunite and forgive is our way to go. Sometimes we forget that within genocides and mass killings, there are people and whose lives can change dramatically in just one day. This is something that as a community we should think about, reflect on, and ensure that our future contains only positive change.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Lloyd. I'm 17 years old and a Jewish student at Cantor Solomon High School. This is a poem I have written about a Holocaust survivor whose story really resonated with me. One day, that is all it takes for a story to change. A new chapter opened, the pages turned. Our lives are all different and yet the same, and it is from this that I have learned. That one day, for me, is not one day for you. And a German Jewish refugee named Margaret might say the same too. My name is Margaret. I'm friends with a neighbour's son. This morning I am off to our family shop, for there is always work to be done. My childhood was full of family. I was happy like a child should be. I suppose one never expects a day like the 1st of April, 1933. As Mum and I got to our family shop, we were more than surprised to see the neighbour's son, my friend, in the uniform, standing outside. My mother cried, "How could you do this to us?" His answer I anticipated with dread. Orders are orders. That is what the neighbour's son, my friend, said. From that one day, the shop saw no customers, and we saw fewer friends. We knew we had to leave, for we could tell how this would end. Our family fled and spread across the sea. Mum and me chose Amsterdam to stay. My boyfriend told me to come to England. He saved my life that day. Margaret and her brother were the only members of their family to survive Hitler's monstrosity. She said, "It never leaves you. It is with me, what happened to me constantly." My name is Rebecca. I'm Jewish and 17 years old. Yom Echad, one day I should never see a story like Margaret's being told in the present tense. We say never again, but after the Holocaust, how many genocides did follow? Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, Syria. We said never again to our tomorrow. But one day, it could happen. And like Margaret, everything in our worlds could change. Don't just assert it, mean it, fight for it, to be able to truthfully say never again.
Finally, my thanks to all of you for virtually attending, and thank you to everyone who has contributed to this important annual event. Thank you to the leader, Councillor Athwell, for the contribution that you made. Thank you to Rabbi Suffering for the prayers of faith leaders. Thank you to the choir. Thanks to everyone who made a reading, especially to the students. And thank you to everyone who worked so hard at enabling our students to participate so well. Thanks to the Vision Parks team for maintaining the Holocaust Memorial Garden and the Srebrenica Memorial Tree throughout the year. Thank you to Janice Hunt and Kirsty Leonard, Vision Events team, Yusuf Patel and the Council for working hard to organise this event. Finally, I would like to remind you all to watch testimony of Holocaust survivor Susan Pollock, MBE, which we recorded in January 2019 here in Holocaust Memorial Gardens in Valentine's Mansion. I would like to close by asking all the faith leaders to lead us in reading the Statement of Commitment which was developed for the inaugural Holocaust Memorial Day.
We recognise that the Holocaust shook the foundations of modern civilization. Its unprecedented character and horror will always hold universal meaning.
We believe the Holocaust must have a permanent place in our nation's collective memory. We honour the survivors still with us and reaffirm our shared goals of mutual understanding and justice.
We must make sure that future generations understand the causes of the Holocaust and reflect upon its consequences. We vow to remember the victims of Nazi persecution and of all genocide.
We value the sacrifices of those who have risked their lives to protect or rescue victims as a touchstone of the human capacity for good in the face of evil.
We recognise that humanity is still scarred by the belief that race or religion or disability or sexuality makes some people's lives worth less than others. Genocide, anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, and discrimination still continue. We have a shared responsibility to fight these evils.
We pledge to strengthen our efforts to promote education and research about the Holocaust and other genocides. We will do our utmost to make sure that the lessons of such events are fully learnt.
We will continue to encourage Holocaust remembrance by holding an annual Holocaust Memorial Day. We condemn the evils of prejudice, discrimination, and racism. We value a free, tolerant, and democratic society.